What if everything you thought you knew about one of America's biggest murder trials wasn't the full story? On a freezing winter morning, a respected Boston police officer was found dead in the snow. Within hours, the woman who loved him became the prime suspect. But shocking twists, disputed evidence, and unexpected testimony left one question hanging over the courtroom. What did the jury see that millions of Americans never expected?
It all began in the dark, early hours of January 29, 2022 in Canton, Massachusetts. Temperatures had plummeted well below freezing after a relentless night of heavy snow. Right around dawn, first responders rushed to the front yard of a quiet home on Fairview Road, and what they found there was grim. John O'Keefe, a veteran Boston police officer, was discovered lying unconscious in the snow. Despite desperate, frantic efforts to save his life, he was later pronounced dead.
At first, investigators were staring at a scene filled with profound uncertainty. You have this bitter cold, and the heavy snowfall had essentially blanketed the area, making the initial assessment incredibly difficult. Authorities had to ask themselves, was this just a terrible, tragic accident caused by the freezing elements? Or had something far more sinister, far more serious happened during the night?
As detectives began the incredibly complex process of retracing O'Keefe's final hours, one name very quickly moved to the center of their investigation: Karen Reed. She was his girlfriend. In the immediate aftermath of the discovery, law enforcement zeroed right in on her movements that night, and almost overnight, she transitioned from a grieving partner to the prime suspect in a homicide investigation.
The divide between the two sides was absolute. On one side, you have the prosecution. They allege that after the couple attended a gathering, Reed reversed her SUV into O'Keefe, causing fatal injuries, and then just left the scene, without realizing or perhaps acknowledging what had happened. She was subsequently charged in connection with his death. But almost the second those allegations went public, Karen Reed's defense team fired back. They strongly denied the accusations, arguing the prosecutors had reached the completely wrong conclusion. They claimed the investigation ignored critical facts, completely overlooked other possible explanations, and was deeply flawed right from the start.
What initially looked like a straightforward criminal case rapidly transformed into one of the most controversial legal battles in recent American history. News coverage literally exploded across television and social media. Every single new court filing, every witness interview, and every leaked detail sparked a fierce, nationwide debate. People began intensely scrutinizing police investigation methods and questioning the actual reliability of the forensic evidence. This wasn't just a local tragedy anymore. It was a full-blown national spectacle.
By the time the trial finally began, millions of people were already hooked, following every single development. And the courtroom wasn't simply deciding what happened to John O'Keefe on that snowy night. It was tasked with weighing two completely different versions of the exact same reality. Each side was offering its own stark, uncompromising interpretation of the exact same evidence.
This deep, bitter division raised a suspenseful question that no one could answer with absolute certainty at the outset. Was John O'Keefe the victim of a tragic hit-and-run, just as the prosecution alleged? Or was there a much deeper mystery hidden beneath the snow that the jury would eventually have to unravel? Part 1. The Investigation Under Fire. As law enforcement worked to reconstruct John O'Keefe's final hours, they quickly realized this was not going to be an ordinary homicide investigation. Every phone call, every text message, and every minute of surveillance footage became a fiercely contested puzzle piece in a picture that just refused to fit together easily.
The contrasting views on the physical evidence were stark. According to prosecutors, the damage found on Karen Reed's SUV, the forensic analysis from the scene, and the cell phone and digital records all created a very clear timeline. They argued that these elements combined to suggest Reed struck O'Keefe and left the area. The defense, however, painted a vastly different picture. They aggressively challenged the way evidence was collected, they questioned the reliability of the forensic conclusions, and they argued the digital timeline was incomplete and highly misleading. They insisted that investigators completely failed to fully examine other possible explanations for O'Keefe's death.
A central pillar of the defense's strategy was a foundational legal principle. They reminded the jury and the watching public that under the law, Karen Reed remains presumed innocent unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They argued that critical mistakes and glaring inconsistencies during the investigation cast massive doubt on the prosecution's entire version of events. Their main point? Suspicion alone is never enough to support a criminal conviction.
As these two competing narratives unfolded, public attention shifted dramatically. It moved from simply wondering what happened that night to a nationwide debate over whether the investigators themselves had actually uncovered the complete truth. Americans across the country weren't just debating Karen Reed's guilt or innocence anymore. They were actively debating the integrity and the methods of the investigation itself.
Part 2. The courtroom battle. By the time the case reached the courtroom, every single assumption was ready to be tested under intense scrutiny. And what surprised a lot of observers was that some of the trial's most dramatic moments came not from emotional testimony, but from experts engaging in high-stakes debates over science, technology, and the actual reliability of the evidence.
Prosecutors presented what they described as a carefully connected chain of evidence. They methodically laid out their forensic findings, the digital records, and the witness testimony. Expert witnesses were brought in to explain their intricate analysis to the jury. According to the prosecution, each piece of evidence reinforced the others, creating this comprehensive picture that they believe definitively supports the charges against Karen Reed.
But the defense methodically attacked this chain of evidence. During aggressive cross-examination, defense attorneys questioned the very methods used by law enforcement to collect evidence at the scene. They disputed parts of the forensic analysis, highlighted investigative inconsistencies, and proposed alternative interpretations for the data presented by the state. It felt like every witness strengthened one side, while giving the other another opportunity to aggressively challenge the narrative.
As days of testimony unfolded, the courtroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Jurors sat there and listened to experts who reached completely different conclusions from the exact same evidence. By the end of the proceedings, the climax of the trial rested on one critical question. After hearing every argument and seeing every single piece of evidence, had the prosecution proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt? Or had the defense created enough uncertainty to change everything?
Part 3. The aftermath and unanswered questions. As the courtroom battle reached its final stage, one truth became impossible to ignore. This legal battle had grown far, far larger than a single trial. It sparked massive national conversations about investigative procedures, forensic science, digital evidence, and the immense level of scrutiny applied to high-profile criminal cases today.
The trial's outcome and the subsequent legal developments have continued to fuel a bitter divide across the country. Supporters of the prosecution remained incredibly steadfast. They believe the evidence clearly supports the charges that were brought. But on the other side, supporters of the defense argue with equal passion that the investigation left critical questions completely unanswered, and that the evidence should be viewed through a highly skeptical lens.
Yet, amidst all the bold headlines, the social media frenzy, and the endless legal maneuvering, there is a very real, tragic core to this story. For the family and loved ones of John O'Keefe, this case has never been about public debate or legal spectacle. It has always been about seeking answers after an unimaginable loss. The human cost of that freezing winter night remains at the very heart of the Canton mystery.
The Karen Reed trial has become one of America's most closely watched legal battles. It's a stark reminder that in a courtroom, every fact must be tested and every verdict carries enormous weight. But after everything the jury heard and everything the public saw, we are left with a lingering thought. Did the courtroom reveal the complete truth, or is this a mystery that America will continue debating long after the final decision?